The House That Hungered. Chapter 1, The Arrival. The storm raged like a living beast, its claws raking Jonas Reeves' battered sedan as it crawled up the serpentine road to Heroic Hall. Rain lashed the cracked windshield, wipers shrieking, their rhythm a frantic heartbeat against the howling wind. The headlights flickered, frail against the suffocating darkness, casting jagged shadows that danced like specters across the gnarled trees lining the path. Jonas gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, his jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. Beside him, Clara sat rigid, her fingers knotted around a thermos of coffee gone cold hours ago, her breath shallow, her eyes fixed on the void beyond the glass. In the back seat, Milo, their wiry terrier, pressed his nose to the fogged window, his whimpers sharp, his eyes darting as if chasing something unseen in the storm. "Almost there," Jonas said, his voice raw, more a prayer than a promise. He stole a glance at Clara, searching for a spark of hope, but her face was a mask, lips pressed thin, eyes shadowed, reflecting the storm's chaos. "This is it, Clara. Our chance to start over." Clara's silence cut deeper than the wind's roar, a wound that hadn't healed since their life unraveled. The solicitor's letter weighed heavy in her coat pocket, its words seared into her mind. Heroic Hall, bequeathed to Jonas Reeves by his late uncle, Marcus Harrow. Jonas barely remembered Marcus, a gaunt figure from childhood, his eyes like burned coals, his voice a rasp that lingered like smoke. Why leave them a house now, when their world was ash? Jonas's novels moldered in obscurity, their Brooklyn apartment lost to eviction, their savings drained by debts they couldn't outrun. Heroic Hall was their last refuge, or a trap disguised as salvation. The road ended abruptly at a wrought iron gate, its bars twisted into grotesque shapes, choked with glistening vines that pulsed faintly in the headlights' glow. Beyond loomed Heroic Hall, a Gothic monstrosity of weathered stone, its towers clawing at the storm clouds, its windows black voids that seemed to swallow the light. The air grew thick, sour, coating Jonas's tongue with the taste of spoiled fruit, a stench that clung to his lungs. He killed the engine, the silence deafening, broken only by the storm's relentless assault. "God," Clara whispered, her breath fogging the glass, her voice trembling with something deeper than cold. "It's not a house, Jonas. It's alive." Jonas forced a grin, brittle and unconvincing, his heart pounding. "It's got character. Perfect for a writer's retreat, right?" Clara's eyes flicked to him, sharp and accusing, but she said nothing, her fingers tightening around the thermos until her knuckles blanched. Milo's whimpers escalated, his paws scrabbling at the door, his body trembling as if the gate itself were a predator. "It's just a storm, baby," Clara murmured, her voice unsteady, reaching back to stroke his fur. But Milo's eyes were wild, fixed on the house, his growl low and guttural, a sound Jonas had never heard from him before. Jonas braved the downpour, the cold slicing through his threadbare jacket like a blade, the rain soaking him to the bone as he wrestled the gate open. Its rusted hinges screamed, a sound like torn flesh, echoing through the valley. The vines writhed under his touch, their surfaces slick, warm, almost pulsing, and he yanked his hands back, heart hammering, the sensation lingering like a burn. He climbed back into the car, water streaming from his hair, his breath short. "Gates open," he said, avoiding Clara's gaze, his hands shaking on the wheel. He drove through, gravel crunching like bones under the tires, the house looming larger with every turn, its silhouette swallowing the sky. The storm seemed to pause, the wind holding its breath, as they crossed the threshold of the property, the gate clanging shut behind them with a finality that chilled Jonas's blood. Clara's hand found his, her grip bruising, her nails digging into his palm, but neither spoke, the house's presence a weight on their chests. The front door was massive, oak carved with vines that seemed to shift in the flashlight's beam, their tips curling like fingers beckoning them inside. Jonas fumbled with the key, its metal icy, biting his fingers, the lock resisting until it gave with a groan that vibrated through the stone. The foyer yawned before them, a mausoleum of shadows colder than the storm, reeking of damp wood and something metallic, like blood seeping from hidden cracks. Cobwebs draped the chandelier, its crystals glinting in Clara's flashlight, casting fractured light across a gallery of portraits, severe faces, their eyes piercing, their mouths curled in faint, knowing smirks that seemed to widen as Jonas looked away. "Power's out," Jonas said, flicking a switch, the click swallowed by the silence. "I'll check the breaker in the morning." Clara hugged her coat tighter, her boots leaving wet trails on the groaning floorboards, her flashlight beam darting across the walls, catching glimpses of faded wallpaper peeling like skin. "This place feels like it's waiting," she said, her voice low, as if afraid the house would hear. "Like it's been waiting for us." Milo growled, his hackles raised, his body low, staring at a corner where the shadows seemed thicker, writhing like smoke. Jonas laughed, the sound too loud, echoing unnaturally through the foyer, bouncing off the portrait's glinting eyes. "Just a draft, buddy," he said, but his voice trembled, the air pressing against his skin, watchful, heavy with intent. Clara's grip tightened on Milo's leash, her eyes narrowing. "He's never like this," she said, her voice edged with fear, her gaze following Milo's to the corner, where the shadows seemed to pulse, their edges fraying like fabric torn by claws. "He senses something, Jonas. Something we can't." Jonas hauled their suitcases inside, clothes, his laptop, Clara's paints, the remnants of their shattered life. The stairs creaked under their weight, each step a groan that echoed through the house, the air growing colder, thicker, as they climbed to the second floor. They claimed a bedroom, its bed sagging under a faded quilt, the wallpaper peeling in strips, revealing plaster that seemed to pulse faintly in the flashlight's beam. A crack spiderwebbed the ceiling, its edges jagged, like a mouth waiting to open. Milo paced, sniffing the walls, refusing to settle, his eyes darting to the crack, his growl low and constant. "He's spooked," Clara said, her voice trembling, her hand stroking Milo's fur, trying to calm him, but her own fear was palpable, her eyes avoiding the crack, the walls, the shadows. "This place is wrong, Jonas. It's all wrong." "He'll adjust," Jonas replied, unpacking, his hands unsteady, his heart pounding. "We all will. We have to." But sleep was a distant hope. The storm rattled the windows, their panes rattling like teeth in a skull, and the house creaked, shifting in its sleep, its groans deliberate, rhythmic, like the breathing of something vast and ancient. Jonas lay awake, Clara's breathing shallow beside him, Milo tense at the bed's foot, his eyes glinting in the dark, fixed on the ceiling crack, which seemed wider, darker, its edges curling like lips. A door slammed somewhere deep in the house, sharp and deliberate, like a gunshot in the silence. Jonas's heart lurched, his breath catching, but he blamed the wind, even as the air grew colder, pressing against his chest, slipping into his lungs like a hand. The next morning, the storm had eased to a drizzle, the valley shrouded in mist that clung to the hills like a shroud. They drove to Dunwich, a gray cluster of buildings hunched against the landscape, their facades weathered, their windows dark, as if the town itself were holding its breath. The general store reeked of mildew, its shelves dusty, its air thick with the scent of old paper and decay. The clerk, an old man with clouded eyes, watched them over bifocals, his hands slow as he bagged their groceries, his gaze lingering on Milo, who cowered at Clara's feet, his tail tucked, his eyes darting to the shadows. "You at Heroic?" the clerk asked, his voice gravelly, his eyes narrowing as he studied Jonas, then Clara, then Milo again. "That house don't like strangers. Or animals. Keep an eye on that dog." Clara's brow furrowed, her grip tightening on Milo's leash, her voice sharp. "What's that supposed to mean?" The clerk shrugged, his eyes sliding away, but his hands paused, trembling faintly, as if he'd said too much. "Just a word of caution," he muttered, bagging the last can, his gaze lingering on the door as they left. Outside, the mist coiled around them, the air heavy, sour, like the house's breath following them. A woman in a tattered shawl stood across the street, her face half hidden, her eyes glinting in the dim light, her lips moving in a whisper Jonas couldn't hear but felt in his bones. "Fools, cursed, taken." Clara froze, her hand clutching Jonas's arm, her nails digging into his skin. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling, her eyes wide. "Just the wind," Jonas lied, pulling her toward the car, his stomach churning, the clerk's warning a splinter in his mind, joining the woman's muttered curse, the gate's pulsing vines, the house's watchful air. He drove back in silence, Clara's hands clasped around Milo, who whimpered, his eyes fixed on the road behind them, as if something followed. Heroic Hall loomed darker, its shadows sharper, its windows glinting like eyes in the mist. Milo refused the foyer, planting his paws at the threshold, his growl deepening, his eyes fixed on the upper landing, where the light seemed to falter, swallowed by a darkness that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Clara coaxed him, her voice soft, but her hands trembled, her eyes darting to the portraits, their smirks wider, their eyes hungrier, as if they knew something Jonas didn't. "He's not right," Clara said, her voice low, her gaze lingering on the landing, where the shadows seemed to writhe, their edges fraying like smoke. "None of this is right, Jonas." Jonas didn't answer, his throat tight, the house's silence louder, its shadows deeper, its hunger stirring in the air, a promise of horrors yet to come. Chapter 2, Scratches in the Walls. The first week at Heroic Hall was a relentless battle against decay, a war Jonas and Clara fought with blistered hands and fraying nerves, the house resisting their every effort like a living adversary. Jonas climbed the roof, wrestling with leaks that bled black water, the wind biting through his jacket, the tiles slick under his boots, their edges crumbling as if the house shed its skin. Clara scoured the kitchen, her nails chipped, her face drawn, scrubbing grime that seemed to seep from the walls, reappearing overnight, thicker, darker, like a wound festering. The pipes groaned like wounded beasts, the windows jammed shut, their panes rattling as if trying to escape, and every room revealed new rot, as if the house were decaying faster than they could repair, mocking their attempts to tame it. Milo changed most of all, his once bright eyes dulled, his tail tucked, his body slinking through the halls like a shadow of himself. He avoided the dining room, where the chandelier swayed without a breeze, its crystals glinting like eyes watching, and the cellar door, its lock rusted but warm to the touch, its surface pulsing faintly, like a heart beneath the wood. At night, he paced the bedroom, his nails clicking on the floorboards, his growls low, his eyes fixed on the ceiling crack, which seemed to widen, its edges curling like a mouth waiting to speak. One evening, Milo erupted, his barks raw, echoing through the house, shattering the uneasy silence. Jonas, exhausted from wrestling a rusted gutter, his hands raw, his temper frayed, slammed his hammer down on the parlor table, the sound a gunshot in the stillness. "Milo, enough," he shouted, his voice cracking, his chest heaving, the air pressing against him, heavy with the house's watchful gaze. Clara knelt beside Milo, her hands trembling, stroking his trembling fur, her eyes wide with fear. "He's terrified, Jonas," she said, her voice low, her gaze darting to the staircase, where Milo's barks were directed, the shadows on the landing thicker, pulsing faintly. "Something's wrong. He's never like this." "He's adjusting," Jonas said, rubbing his temples, the words hollow, a lie he clung to despite the evidence piling around them. He'd seen Milo freeze at the cellar door, growling, his body rigid as if facing a predator, his eyes glinting with a fear Jonas couldn't explain. 2 nights ago, he'd caught Milo staring at a parlor wall, his ears twitching, listening to something Jonas couldn't hear, a faint scratching, like nails dragging through wood, gone when he strained to listen. Clara's discovery shattered their fragile routine, a crack in the house's facade that revealed its malevolent heart. She was in the study, ripping up a threadbare carpet to expose the floorboards, hoping to salvage something usable, when her fingers brushed rough wood. She peeled the carpet back, her flashlight trembling, revealing claw marks, deep, jagged, hand-shaped but wrong, the fingers too long, too thin, the nails gouging spirals that seemed to pulse in the light, their edges fresh, as if carved moments ago. "Jonas," she shouted, her voice cracking, raw, echoing through the house, a cry that shook the walls. Jonas rushed in, his boots pounding, his flashlight catching the marks, his breath catching in his throat, his heart hammering. "What the hell is this?" he whispered, his voice trembling, the air sour, pressing against his skin, the stench of decay seeping from the gouges. Clara crouched, her hands hovering over the marks, her face ashen, her eyes wide with dread. "Not animal," she said, her voice low, her fingers trembling as they traced the air above the spirals, afraid to touch. "Look at the fingers. Too human, but wrong." Jonas knelt beside her, his flashlight shaking, his stomach churning as he studied the marks. The gouges were deliberate, each nail a writhing line, their spirals hypnotic, drawing his gaze deeper, as if they wanted to pull him in. The wood around them was warm, pulsing faintly, like flesh beneath his fingers, and he yanked his hand back, his breath short, the sensation burning in his mind. "Village kids," he said, grasping for reason, his voice unsteady, his eyes darting to the windows, sealed tight, their panes fogged with a breath like mist. "A prank, maybe?" Clara shook her head, her eyes flashing, her grip tightening on her flashlight, bruising her palm. "The carpet was nailed down, Jonas," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the silence. "No one's touched this in decades. Look at the dust, the rust. This was hidden." Milo whimpered from the doorway, refusing to cross the threshold, his body low, his growl deepening, his eyes fixed on the marks, as if they were alive, watching him back. Jonas dragged the carpet back, the fabric catching on the gouges, tearing like skin, his hands shaking, his heart pounding. "Let's not overthink it," he said, his voice tight, his gaze avoiding the marks, the spirals burning in his mind. "Old houses have quirks. We'll sand it down, cover it up." Clara grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his skin, her eyes wild, her breath ragged. "This isn't a quirk, Jonas," she said, her voice rising, echoing in the study, the house groaning in response, a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. "It's a warning. This place is telling us to leave." Jonas pulled away, his arms stinging, his chest tight, his denial a fragile shield against the house's mounting horrors. "We can't leave," he said, his voice low, his eyes avoiding hers, the clerk's warning echoing in his mind, "That house don't like strangers. We have nowhere to go, Clara. This is our only shot." Clara's laugh was brittle, cutting, her eyes glinting with tears, her hands trembling. "Our shot?" she said, her voice breaking, her gaze darting to the marks, the spirals pulsing in the light. "This place isn't a shot, Jonas. It's a trap." They didn't speak of the scratches again, but the house felt heavier, its shadows clinging to the walls, its air thicker, sour, slipping into their lungs like a poison. Jonas dreamed of hands bursting through the floor, their nails scraping, their fingers long and thin, pulling him into a void of claws and teeth, their voices whispering his name, promising to keep him forever. He woke gasping, his chest heaving, Milo's growl a low rumble in the darkness, the dog staring at the study wall, where the wallpaper rippled faintly, faces forming and vanishing when Jonas blinked, his heart pounding, his flashlight shaking in his hand. Clara avoided the study, her eyes darting to its door whenever she passed, her hands clutching Milo's leash, her steps hurried, as if the house might reach out and claim her. Jonas hauled furniture to the attic, his gaze drifting to the carpet's edge, where the spirals seemed to glow faintly, their patterns shifting when he looked away. At dinner, Clara's hands shook, spilling wine across the table, the stain spreading like blood, its edges curling into shapes that weren't right, fingers, eyes, mouths. "We should leave," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the stain, her voice barely audible, the house's silence louder, listening. "And go where?" Jonas said, his appetite gone, his fork clattering to the plate, the sound sharp in the stillness. "We're broke, Clara. This is all we have." "Then fix it," she snapped, her voice cracking, her eyes flashing with anger, with fear, with something deeper, a despair that mirrored his own but cut sharper. "Fix this place, fix us, Jonas. Or we're not going to survive this." Milo whined, his eyes darting to the ceiling, where the crack had widened, its edges jagged, like a mouth opening wider, its darkness pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat. The house creaked, a guttural laugh echoing through the walls, shaking the chandelier, its crystals glinting like eyes, watching, waiting. Jonas cleared the table, his hands shaking, his heart pounding, the stain on the tablecloth spreading, its shapes clearer now, a hand reaching out, its nails black, its fingers long and thin, promising more. That night, Jonas heard Milo's nails clicking, pausing at the bedroom door, a rhythm that matched the house's creaks, its breaths. He rose, flashlight in hand, finding Milo staring at the ceiling crack, now wider, deeper, its edges curling like lips, a faint whisper drifting from its depths, calling his name, soft and hungry. He slammed the door, his breath short, his heart hammering, the portrait's eyes glinting in the hallway, their smirks wider, their mouths moving, promising horrors yet to come. Chapter 3, The Disappearance. On the 10th day at Heroic Hall, Milo vanished, and the house bared its teeth, its hunger no longer a whisper but a roar that tore through Jonas and Clara's fragile defenses. Jonas woke to Clara's scream, raw and primal, a sound that clawed at his soul, echoing through the house like a gunshot. He stumbled downstairs, his heart pounding, his bare feet cold on the groaning floorboards, finding Clara collapsed in the foyer, her body shaking, her hands clutching Milo's collar, its leather icy, its tags glinting like eyes in the flashlight's beam. The air was sour, thick with the stench of decay, pressing against his skin, slipping into his lungs like a hand, choking his breath. "He's gone," Clara sobbed, rocking, her fingers digging into the collar, her nails leaving marks in the leather, her eyes wild, red, raw. "I let him out last night, just for a minute, and he came back, Jonas. I locked the door, I locked it, I swear." Jonas knelt beside her, his hands hovering, unsure if he should touch her, his heart hammering, his mind racing. "We'll find him," he said, his voice unsteady, a promise he didn't believe, the clerk's warning ringing in his ears, "Keep an eye on that dog." He stood, flashlight shaking, and checked every room, every window, every door, all locked, their bolts rusted, their frames sealed tight, no paw prints in the mud outside, no trace of Milo's wiry frame, his bright eyes, his eager bark. Just the collar, abandoned on the stairs, its tags glinting, watching, as if the house had stripped it from him and left it as a taunt. He wouldn't run, Clara said, her voice breaking, her body trembling, her eyes fixed on the collar, its leather cracked, its tags pulsing faintly in the light, like a heartbeat. "He's never run, Jonas. Never." Jonas held her, his arms stiff, his chest tight, the woman's curse from Dunwich echoing in his mind, "That house takes what it wants." He pushed it away, clinging to reason, but the house's silence was deliberate, listening, its shadows deeper, its air heavier, its hunger stirring. The portraits in the foyer watched, their smirks wider, their eyes glinting with secrets, their mouths seeming to move, whispering words he couldn't hear but felt in his bones. They searched the grounds, their voices hoarse, their boots sinking in the mud, the forest swallowing their cries, its trees leaning inward, their branches skeletal, their bark glistening with a black ichor that pulsed faintly, like veins under skin. The mist coiled around them, thick and sour, carrying the house's stench, its breath following them into the trees. Jonas called Milo's name, his voice cracking, his flashlight shaking, its beam swallowed by the darkness, catching glimpses of shapes, tall, thin, fraying at the edges, that vanished when he turned. Clara clung to his arm, her nails digging, her breath ragged, her eyes wild, searching the shadows, whispering Milo's name like a prayer. In Dunwich, the villagers shook their heads, their eyes sliding away, their voices low, as if afraid the house could hear them across the hills. The general store clerk watched, his clouded eyes narrowing, his hands trembling as he bagged their flyers, Milo's face printed in grainy black and white. "Won't find him," he muttered, his voice gravelly, his gaze lingering on Clara, who froze, her hands clutching the counter, her knuckles white. "That house takes what it wants. Always has." Clara's breath hitched, her eyes flashing, her voice sharp. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, leaning forward, her nails scraping the counter, her body trembling with anger, with fear, with a desperation Jonas recognized in himself but couldn't voice. The clerk shrugged, his eyes sliding to the door, his hands pausing, trembling faintly. "Just what I know," he said, his voice low, his gaze avoiding hers. "Heroic's been empty before. Never stays that way long. Something's always hungry." Outside, the mist thickened, the air heavy, sour, the woman in the shawl standing across the street, her eyes glinting, her lips moving in a whisper, "Taken, cursed, gone." Jonas pulled Clara to the car, his heart pounding, his hands shaking, the clerk's words a splinter in his mind, joining the woman's curse, the scratches, the house's watchful air. "He's just an old man," Jonas said, his voice unsteady, starting the engine, avoiding Clara's gaze. "Spinning stories." Clara's laugh was brittle, cutting, her eyes glinting with tears. "Stories?" she said, her voice breaking, her hands clutching Milo's collar, its tags glinting in her lap, like eyes watching. "That's not a story, Jonas. That's a warning." Back at Heroic, the house loomed darker, its shadows sharper, its windows glinting like eyes in the mist, its stones pulsing faintly, like a heart waking. Milo's absence was a void, his toys scattered, his bowl untouched, the air thick with his scent, now sour, rotting, mingling with the house's stench. Clara curled on the parlor couch, Milo's collar in her hands, her eyes raw, her body trembling, her breath shallow. Jonas made tea, the kettle's whistle piercing, its steam curling like fingers in the air, the house's silence louder, listening, waiting. "We'll keep looking," Jonas said, setting the cup beside her, his voice unsteady, his hands trembling, knowing it was a lie, the forest's shadows, the villagers' warnings, the house's hunger all converging in his mind. Clara's eyes, hollow, accused him, her voice a whisper, afraid the house would hear. "You don't believe he's coming back," she said, her fingers tracing the collar's leather, her nails leaving marks, her gaze fixed on the portraits, their smirks wider, their eyes hungrier. "You think he's gone, don't you?" "I do," Jonas lied, his voice cracking, his chest tight, his hands clenching to hide their shaking. "We'll find him, Clara. I promise." She turned away, her shoulders shaking, her sobs muffled, the house groaning in response, a low rumble that vibrated through the floor, shaking the chandelier, its crystals glinting like eyes, watching, waiting. Jonas sat beside her, his hands hovering, words failing, the silence a chasm between them, the house's hunger filling the void, its shadows deeper, its air heavier, promising more. That night, Jonas dreamed of Milo standing at the edge of a black pit, his fur matted, his eyes empty, his body trembling as shadows reached from the depths, their fingers long and thin, their nails black, pulling him down. Jonas reached, his hands clawing air, but the pit bit, its depths pulsing like a heart, its voices whispering his name, promising to keep Milo forever. He woke gasping, his chest heaving, his flashlight shaking in his hand, Milo's growl a memory echoing in the silence, the house creaking, sharp and deliberate, like a predator stirring. He crept to the foyer, the air sour, the cellar door ajar, its darkness spilling like ink, its stench choking, rotting, beckoning. "Milo?" he whispered, his voice trembling, his flashlight swallowed by the stairs, catching a glimpse of movement, a shadow, tall and thin, its edges fraying like smoke, its eyes glinting like coins, watching him back. A guttural sound answered, wet, wrong, like a throat choking on blood, echoing from below, shaking the walls. Jonas slammed the door, his hands shaking, the lock clicking shut, his heart hammering, the portrait's eyes glinting in the darkness, their smirks wider, their mouths moving, amused, promising horrors yet to come. He sat by Clara, her breathing uneven, her hands clutching Milo's collar, her face pale in the moonlight, her eyes open, staring at the ceiling crack, now wider, deeper, its edges curling like lips, a faint whisper drifting. From its depths, calling her name, soft and hungry. "He's still here," she whispered, her voice barely audible, her fingers tracing the collar, its tags glinting, like eyes watching. "I feel him, Jonas. He's not gone." Jonas didn't answer, his throat tight, the house's silence louder, its shadows deeper, its hunger stirring, a promise of horrors yet to come, its heartbeat syncing with his own, a drumbeat that shook his bones. Chapter 4, The Mirror Room. The house tightened its grip, its walls warping, its hallways stretching into impossible lengths, the air growing thick, sour, choking Jonas and Clara's lungs like a hand squeezing their throats. Milo's disappearance and the scratches in the study had fractured their fragile unity, their arguments sharper, their voices raw, the house feeding on their discord like a predator savoring blood. Jonas paced the foyer, his boots echoing on groaning floorboards, his flashlight trembling, its beam catching the portraits, severe faces, their eyes glinting like polished coins, their smirks curling into grins that seemed to pulse with the house's heartbeat. Clara stayed in the bedroom, clutching Milo's collar, her eyes hollow, her voice a whisper, afraid the house would hear her fears. "We're not alone," she said, her gaze fixed on the chandelier, its crystals swaying without a breeze, glinting like eyes watching, waiting. It's in here with us, Jonas. It's always watching. Jonas rubbed his face, exhaustion carving deep lines, his eyes bloodshot, his hands shaking from too much coffee and too little sleep. It's grief, Clara, he said, his voice unsteady, his denial a crumbling shield against the house's mounting horrors. It's messing with our heads. We just need to hold it together. Clara's silence was a blade, her eyes accusing, her trust fraying like the peeling wallpaper, its floral patterns twisting into mouths, eyes, hands that vanished when Jonas blinked. The house's creaks were rhythmic, deliberate, a breathing that synced with his pulse, vibrating through the walls, pressing against his chest. He avoided the cellar door, its lock rusted but warm, pulsing faintly like a heart beneath the wood, its darkness beckoning, promising answers he wasn't ready to face. One gray morning, as the mist clung to the valley like a shroud, a new door appeared on the second floor, heavy oak, its surface carved with writhing vines, their tips curling like fingers, pulsing faintly in the flashlight's beam. Jonas froze, his heart hammering, the air sour, thick with the stench of decay and something sweeter, like rotting flesh. The door hadn't been there yesterday, its frame seamless with the wall, as if the house had grown it overnight, a wound in its flesh. Clara, he called, his voice echoing unnaturally, bouncing off the walls, distorted, returning as a whisper that wasn't his own. Clara emerged, clutching Milo's collar, her eyes red, her hands trembling, her breath shallow. "What is it?" she asked, her voice low, her gaze darting to the door, its vines seeming to writhe, their edges sharp, glinting like teeth. Jonas gripped the handle, its metal warm, yielding like flesh, and pushed, the hinges screaming, a sound like torn skin, echoing through the house, shaking the walls. The door opened to a circular room, its walls bare save for a massive mirror, its frame etched with faces, screaming, smiling, their eyes too deep, their mouths twisted, their edges pulsing faintly, as if alive. The glass showed their reflections, but wrong, backs turned, shoulders hunched, postures broken, faces hidden, as if the mirror refused to see them as they were. "What is this place?" Clara whispered, stepping closer, her breath fogging the glass, her eyes wide, her hands trembling, Milo's collar slipping to the floor, its tags clinking, glinting like eyes watching. The air grew colder, heavier, pressing against Jonas's chest, the house's heartbeat louder, syncing with his own, a drumbeat that shook his bones. "Don't," Jonas said, grabbing her arm, his grip bruising, his heart hammering, his flashlight shaking, its beam swallowed by the mirror's surface, which rippled faintly, like water disturbed by an unseen hand. Clara's reflection twitched, its head tilting, its shoulders hunching further, its fingers elongating, nails blackening, curling like claws. A shadow emerged behind it, tall, thin, limbs too long, its eyes glinting like coins, its fingers reaching, brushing the reflection's neck, leaving trails of ash that burned Jonas's mind. "Jonas," it moved, Clara gasped, her voice breaking, her body trembling, her hands clawing at his arm, her nails digging into his skin, drawing blood. "It's not me. That's not me." Jonas dragged her back, his boots slipping on the floor, which felt soft, yielding, like flesh beneath his feet. The shadow grew, its fingers stretching, its eyes glinting, its mouth opening, a void that whispered Clara's name, soft and hungry, echoing through the room, shaking the walls. Clara screamed, her knees buckling, her hands clawing at Jonas, her eyes wild, her breath ragged. He slammed the door, the sound a gunshot, the hinges screaming, the house groaning in response, a low rumble that vibrated through the floor, shaking the chandelier downstairs, its crystals clinking like teeth. The door was gone when they turned, the walls smooth, the plaster warm, pulsing faintly, like a heart beneath the surface. Jonas's hands shook, his flashlight trembling, his breath short, the air choking with the stench of ash and decay, the house's laughter echoing, a chorus of voices, promising more. Clara collapsed against the wall, her hands clutching her face, her sobs muffled, her eyes avoiding the spot where the door had been. "It knew my name," she whispered, her voice breaking, her fingers trembling, Milo's collar glinting on the floor, its tags pulsing faintly, like eyes watching. Jonas knelt beside her, his hands hovering, his heart pounding, his mind racing with denials that crumbled under the weight of the house's truth. "It was a trick," he said, his voice unsteady, his eyes darting to the wall, where the plaster seemed to ripple, faces forming and vanishing, their eyes glinting, their mouths moving, whispering his name. "Just a reflection, Clara. We're tired, that's all." Clara's laugh was brittle, cutting, her eyes flashing with anger, with fear, with a despair that mirrored his own but cut deeper. "A trick," she said, her voice rising, echoing through the hallway, the house groaning in response, its heartbeat louder, its shadows deeper. "That wasn't a trick, Jonas. That was the house. It's inside us now." That night, Clara woke screaming, tearing at the sheets, her eyes wild, her hands clawing at her face, leaving red marks. "It was behind me," she gasped, her voice raw, her body trembling, her eyes darting to the darkness, where the shadows seemed to pulse, their edges fraying like smoke. "It knew my name, Jonas. It wanted me." Jonas held her, his arms shaking, his chest tight, his denial a lie he couldn't sustain. "It was a dream," he said, his voice cracking, his hands trembling, the house's heartbeat deafening, its laughter echoing, promising more. But it wasn't a dream. The house watched, its gaze pressing against their skin, slipping into their thoughts, its hunger of fire burning in their minds. Clara avoided mirrors, her eyes darting to every reflective surface, windows, teacups, doorknobs, her hands trembling, her voice gone, her trust in Jonas fraying further. Jonas searched for the mirror room, his flashlight sweeping the second floor, but the wall was blank, its plaster worn, pulsing faintly, like a heart waiting to wake. He found scratches on the plaster, fresh, hand-shaped, their spirals pulsing in the light, their edges sharp, drawing blood when he touched them. He stumbled back, his heart hammering, his flashlight shaking, the air choking with the stench of decay, the house's laughter echoing, a chorus of voices, promising to show him more. Jonas's flashlight caught a glimpse of Marcus, his uncle, standing in the hallway, his face gaunt, his eyes burned coals, his voice a rasp. "It hungers," Marcus whispered, his form dissolving into shadow, his eyes glinting, his mouth gaping, promising to take Jonas too. Jonas screamed, his voice raw, the hallway empty, the shadows deeper, the house's heartbeat louder, syncing with his own, a drumbeat that shook his bones. Clara and Jonas fought in the parlor, their voices rising, their words cutting, the house feeding on their anger. "You're ignoring it," Clara shouted, her hands shaking, her eyes wild, smashing a glass against the wall, its shards scattering, forming spirals on the floor, their edges pulsing faintly, like veins. "You're letting it take us, Jonas. You're letting it win. I'm trying to keep us alive." Jonas shouted back, his voice breaking, his hands clenching, his heart pounding, the house's laughter echoing, shaking the walls, the portrait. Eyes glinting, their smirks wider, promising more. Clara stormed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door, the sound a gunshot, the house groaning in response, its shadows deepening, its hunger of fire in Jonas's chest, burning, promising to consume them both. Jonas sat in the foyer, his flashlight trained on the staircase, where the shadows seemed to writhe, their edges fraying, their eyes glinting, watching, waiting. The house's breathing grew louder, its heartbeat deafening, its laughter a chorus, promising horrors yet to come, its hunger a weight in his chest, burning his soul, promising to take Clara next. Chapter 5, Clara's Paintings Change. Clara turned to her paints in a desperate bid to reclaim herself, to drown the house's whispers, the scratches, Milo's absence, the mirror room's shadow, with color, to stitch together the fragments of her sanity. She set her easel in the parlor, where the gray light filtered through cracked windows, fighting the shadows but never winning. Her hands were steady at first, her brush strokes deliberate, sketching wildflowers, hills, skies, anything to erase the memory of Milo's empty collar, the shadow's glinting eyes, the house's heartbeat pulsing in her chest. Jonas watched from the doorway, his heart aching, hoping her art would heal her, would heal them, would push back the house's hunger, if only for a moment. Clara's eyes were distant, her hands trembling when she thought he wasn't looking, her lips moving silently, as if whispering to someone, or something, unseen. Morning shattered her hope, each canvas a betrayal, a mirror of the house's malevolence. Her meadow became a field of mutilated animals, their eyes pleading, their limbs twisted, their blood pooling wetly, dripping onto the floor, the paint glistening, smelling of iron and decay. A portrait of Jonas, meant to capture his tired smile, was faceless, its hands dripping red, its chest a void pulsing faintly, like a heart waking. Another showed heroic hall crumbling, its windows bleeding, its stones a gaping mouth, teeth stained, tongue a spiral of ichor writhing in the light, inviting Jonas closer, to fall in. I didn't paint these, Clara said, her voice trembling, her hands shaking as she showed Jonas the worst, a canvas of Milo, his body split open, ribs a doorway to a void of claws and eyes, their surfaces pulsing, mouths moving, whispering her name. It's not me, Jonas. It's the house. Jonas stared, throat dry, heart hammering, paint glistening wetly, air heavy with blood stench, the void pulsing, edges curling like lips, inviting, hungry. Maybe you're sleepwalking, he said, grasping for reason, voice unsteady, hands trembling, denial crumbling against the house's truth. You're stressed, Clara. Grief does things. Clara's eyes flashed, fists clenched, nails digging into palms, blood dripping, forming spirals pulsing faintly, like veins. Don't patronize me, she snapped, voice rising, echoing, house groaning, heartbeat louder, shadows deeper. I'm not crazy, Jonas. The house did this. It's in my head, my hands, my blood. Jonas stepped back, heart pounding, hands raised, mind racing with denials faltering under scratches, Milo's absence, mirror room, paintings. I didn't say you're crazy, he said, voice breaking, eyes on Milo's void, eyes glinting, mouths promising more. We need to figure this out, Clara. Stay calm. Clara's laugh was sharp, cutting, eyes glinting with tears, hands trembling, tearing the canvas, nails streaking paint, void bleeding, ichor pooling, stench choking, burning lungs. Calm, she said, voice raw, collapsing, sobbing, hands clawing face, leaving red marks. It's eating me, Jonas. Jonas knelt, hands hovering, chest tight, logic crumbling, house's creaks rhythmic, breathing louder, air pressing, heartbeat sinking, drumbeat shaking bones. He covered the canvas, hands shaking, void lingering, eyes watching, mouths whispering, promising Clara next. He dreamed of the mirror room, shadow taller, fingers burning, whispering failures, novels, marriage, Milo, Clara, laughter shaking soul. Clara's paintings became obsession, defense against hunger, but mornings brought horrors, canvases mirrors of intent. Family portrait, herself, Jonas, Milo, dawn revealed eyeless faces, claw hands, bodies dissolving into teeth and ichor, paint dripping, blood scented. Jonas found her sobbing, hands stained, paint unwashing, scent clinging, eyes wild, voice accusing. "It's showing what it wants," she said, voice breaking, hands trembling, house's laughter echoing, shadows deepening. Subplots deepened. Clara revealed mother's madness, fear of inheriting it amplified by house, paintings mirroring ravings, chilling Jonas. He found Dunwich newspaper in attic, brittle, detailing residents' disappearances, families, artists, faces in Clara's paintings, eyes gouged, names scratched, erased by house. Discovery chilled, hands trembling, ink staining, pulsing like veins. Jonas searched attic, finding Marcus's journal, blood-scented, entries frantic, house as creature, hunger eternal, hosts consumed, lives rewritten. "It takes art, minds, souls," Marcus wrote, handwriting shaking, final entry smeared, "I tried to fight, but it," Jonas slammed journal, heart hammering, air choking, house's laughter promising more. Clara painted Milo nightly, hands shaking, eyes red, brushstrokes desperate, to hold him, herself. Dawn twisted canvas, Milo's face void, body claws, ribs spiral, pulsing, inviting. Jonas watched, heart aching, hands trembling, house's heartbeat deafening, shadows deeper, laughter promising Clara next. Clara painted in trance, eyes half open, lips chanting guttural words, canvas forming creature, spines for walls, heart for basement, teeth in chimney, eyes alive. Jonas woke her, voice raw, hands shaking, canvas pulsing, eyes glinting, mouths whispering names. Clara screamed, collapsing, hands clawing face, sobs echoing, house groaning, heartbeat louder, shadows deeper. "It's showing me," she gasped, eyes wild, hands stained, paint blood-scented, burning. "It wants me to see." Jonas burned canvas, flames oily, air choking, house groaning, frustration, laughter promising more. Void lingered, etched in minds, eyes watching, mouths whispering, eternity. Clara stopped painting, easel abandoned, hands on collar, eyes hollow, voice gone, trust shattered, house's hunger fire in soul, promising to consume next. Chapter 6, The House Breathes. Heroic Hall's creaks had become breaths, slow and deliberate, a rhythm that synced with Jonas Reeves' pulse, vibrating through the walls, shaking the floorboards, pressing against his chest like a hand squeezing his heart. The air was thick, sour, choking his lungs, the house no longer a structure but a living entity, its windows glinting like eyes, its stones pulsing faintly, its hunger a fire burning in his mind. Clara locked herself in the bedroom, clutching Milo's cracked collar, her eyes hollow, her voice a whisper, refusing to face the parlor's canvases, their voids of claws and teeth staring back, their mouths moving, promising to take her. Jonas sat in the parlor, his laptop blank, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat, his hands trembling from coffee and sleeplessness, his mind fraying under the house's relentless gaze, its shadows clinging to the walls, deeper, heavier, watching. The house groaned, its floorboards vibrating, its air heavy, like breath held too long, its stench seeping into Jonas's lungs, burning his throat with decay and ash. "Just settling," he muttered, his voice unsteady, his flashlight darting across the portraits, their eyes glinting like polished coins, their smirks wider, their mouths moving, whispering words he couldn't hear but felt in his bones. He'd heard the breathing for days, its rhythm deliberate, its heartbeat deafening, but admitting it was surrender, a step toward the abyss he wasn't ready to face. Clara's paintings, twisted by the house's will, and the mirror room's shadow had cracked his denial, but he clung to it, a fragile shield against the truth pressing against his skin. Clara's voice drifted downstairs, faint, trembling, barely audible over the house's groans. "Jonas," she called, her voice breaking, echoing unnaturally, as if the house spoke through her, mocking him. He climbed the stairs, his boots heavy, the air thicker, sourer, the hallway stretching, its shadows pulsing faintly, like veins under skin. The bedroom door was ajar, darkness spilling like ink, its stench choking, rotting, promising answers he didn't want. Clara sat on the bed, clutching Milo's collar, her eyes fixed on the wallpaper, its floral patterns twisting into mouths, eyes, hands, their edges pulsing, rippling, as if alive. "It's breathing," she whispered, her voice low, her hands trembling, her gaze darting to the ceiling crack, now wider, deeper, its edges curling like lips, a faint whisper drifting from its depths, calling her name, soft and hungry. "You hear it, Jonas? It's alive." Jonas swallowed, his throat dry, his heart hammering, his flashlight shaking, its beam swallowed by the darkness, catching glimpses of movement, shadows, tall and thin, their edges fraying like smoke, their eyes glinting like coins, watching, waiting. He'd heard it, the creaks, the sighs, the walls shuddering, the heartbeat vibrating through the floor, syncing with his own, a drumbeat that shook his bones. But admitting it was giving in, letting the house win. "It's the wind," he said, stepping closer, his voice unsteady, his hands trembling, his denial a lie against the house's truth. Clara's eyes flashed, her laugh brittle, cutting, her hands clutching the collar, its tags glinting like eyes, watching. "Stop lying," she said, her voice rising, echoing through the room, the house groaning in response, its heartbeat louder, its shadows deeper. "It's not the wind, Jonas. It's alive, and it's watching us. It's in us." A thud echoed downstairs, sharp and deliberate, like a fist pounding wood, shaking the walls, rattling the chandelier, its crystals clinking like teeth. Jonas crept to the kitchen, Clara following, her breath ragged, her hands trembling, Milo's collar clutched to her chest, its tags pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat. A new door stood in the kitchen wall, heavy oak, its surface carved with vines, their tips curling like fingers, pulsing, glinting in the flashlight's beam, its handle warm, yielding like flesh. The thudding grew louder, coming from beyond, a rhythm matching the house's breathing, its heartbeat, its hunger. "Don't," Clara hissed, her eyes wide, her body trembling, her hands clutching Jonas's arm, her nails digging into his skin, drawing blood. "Don't open it, Jonas. It wants you to." Jonas hesitated, his hand on the handle, its warmth burning his palm, the air choking with the stench of decay, the house's laughter echoing, a chorus of voices, promising answers, promising horrors. He turned the handle, the door swinging open, the hinges screaming, revealing a staircase descending into darkness, its steps slick with ichor, its stench rotting, choking, beckoning. His flashlight trembled, its beam catching a shadow, tall, thin, limbs too long, eyes glinting like lanterns, fingers fraying like smoke, whispering his name, soft and hungry. "Close it." Clara screamed, her voice raw, her hands clawing at Jonas, her eyes wild, her breath ragged. Jonas slammed the door, the sound a gunshot, the lock clicking shut, his heart hammering, his hands shaking, the air choking with the stench of ash and decay, the house's laughter echoing, shaking the walls. Clara was gone, her footsteps echoing, the bedroom door slamming, the sound reverberating, the house groaning in response, its heartbeat louder, its shadows deeper, promising more. Jonas raced after her, the hallway stretching, its walls pulsing, its portraits watching, their eyes glinting, their mouths moving, accusing him of failure, his novels, his marriage, his inability to save Milo, to save Clara. The bedroom door was sealed, its frame fused with the wall, its wood pulsing like flesh, its vines curling, reaching. Jonas clawed at it, his nails tearing, his hands bloodied, Clara's screams echoing from within, the walls closing in, the air choking, the house's lungs his own breathing louder. Clara's screams grew fainter, her voice chanting guttural words, the house's language, its hunger speaking through her. Jonas's hands bled, his flashlight shaking, his heart sinking with the house's, a drumbeat that shook shaking his bones, promising to consume him too. Dawn broke, the door splintering under his weight, revealing the room, Clara curled on the bed, clutching Milo's collar, her eyes hollow, her voice gone, her face pale, her breathing uneven, shallow. "You opened it," she whispered, her eyes accusing, her hands trembling, the collar's tags glinting, like eyes watching. "You let it in, Jonas." Jonas knelt beside her, his hands shaking, his chest tight, his denial crumbling, the house's breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, its hunger a fire burning in his chest, promising to take them both. Subplots deepened, Jonas's guilt over his failed novel, fearing it had summoned the house's hunger, a manuscript he'd burned, its words echoing in the house's whispers, Clara's visions of Milo, his eyes voids, his voice whispering her name, chilling her soul. They fought, their voices rising, their words cutting, Clara accusing Jonas of inviting the house's wrath, Jonas pleading for her to stay strong, their trust shattered, the house's eternal hunger feeding on their discord, its laughter echoing, promising more. Jonas sat by the parlor window, his flashlight trained on the bedroom door, which creaked open an inch, stopping, testing, the house's breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, their edges fraying like fingers. The air was ash-scented with ash, the walls pulsing like flesh, pulsing, portraits' eyes glinting like coins, smirks wider, promising to take Clara next, their hunger a fire, burning in Jonas's soul, promising eternity. He clutched his notebook, his pen trembling, writing to anchor himself, but the ink bled black, forming spirals that pulsed faintly, like veins, the house claiming his words, its laughter a chorus, promising to rewrite him too. Chapter 7, Milo Returns. On the 18th day, a scratching at the front door shattered the house's oppressive silence, a sound like nails dragging across wood, deliberate, insistent, hungry. Jonas stumbled through the foyer, his flashlight shaking, his heart hammering, the air thick with the stench of decay, the house's pulse heartbeat louder, its shadows deeper, watching, waiting. Clara emerged from the bedroom, clutching Milo's collar, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow, her breath shallow, her hope a fragile spark that Jonas feared the house would extinguish. He opened the door, the hinges screaming, the vines outside pulsing faintly in the moonlight, and there stood, Milo stood, his wiry fur clean but glistening wetly, his eyes still, unblinking, his shadow lagging, jagged, too long, a silhouette that didn't match his form, its edges fraying like smoke, its eyes glinting like coins, watching. "Milo!" Clara cried, dropping the collar, its tags clinking, glinting like eyes, as she fell to her knees, her arms wrapping around the dog, her sobs muffled in his fur, her hands trembling, ignoring his stillness, his gaze unblinking, his body rigid, as if carved from stone. Jonas froze, his heart pounding, his flashlight trembling, its beam catching Milo's eyes, empty, reflective, like mirrors showing nothing but darkness, their surfaces pulsing faintly, like the house's heartbeat. Milo's growl was low, human deep, a sound that chilled Jonas's blood, vibrating through the floorboards, syncing with the house's breathing, its hunger stirring. "He's back," Clara whispered, her voice breaking, her eyes red, her hands stroking Milo's fur, her fingers trembling, unaware of the shadow behind him, tall and thin, its limbs too long, its fingers curling, claw-like, fraying at the edges, watching her back. "He's okay, Jonas. He's okay." Jonas stepped closer, his boots heavy, his throat dry, his mind racing with denials that crumbled under the weight of Milo's wrongness, the stillness, the eyes, the shadow that moved when Milo didn't, slithering across the floor, a living entity, its edges pulsing, its eyes glinting, promising more. "Clara," he said, his voice unsteady, his hand hovering, afraid to touch Milo, whose fur seemed to ripple faintly, like water disturbed by an unseen hand. "Something's not right. Look at him." Clara's eyes flashed, her grip tightening on Milo, her nails digging into his fur, her body trembling with anger, with fear, with a desperation Jonas recognized but couldn't share. "He's back," she snapped, her voice rising, echoing through the foyer, the house groaning in response, its heartbeat louder, its shadows deeper. "Don't you dare take this from me, Jonas. He's all I have left." Jonas backed away, his heart hammering, his hands shaking, the shadow detaching from Milo, curling along the walls, its claws scraping, leaving spirals that pulsed faintly, like veins, their stench choking, burning his lungs. He searched the grounds, his flashlight sweeping the mud, finding no paw prints, no trace of Milo's return, the doors locked, the porch dry, the house mocking his efforts, its laughter echoing, a chorus of voices, promising to show him more. In the attic, he found Marcus's notes, hidden in a trunk, their pages brittle, blood-scented, describing Milo's return as a lure, a vessel for the house's hunger, its hosts consumed, their lives rewritten in its walls. "It sends them back hollowed," Marcus wrote, his handwriting shaking, his final entry smeared. "I fed it, but it took me too." That night, Milo's scratching filled the house, not from doors but walls, ceilings, floors, a rhythm matching the house's breathing, its heartbeat, its hunger. Jonas followed the sound, his flashlight trembling, finding Milo in the parlor, staring at the cellar door, his growl guttural, wrong, like a throat choking on blood, his shadow taller, thinner, its fingers reaching, fraying like smoke, whispering Jonas's name. Clara slept with Milo, her arms around him, her breath uneven, her eyes half open, unaware of his stillness, his gaze fixed on her, his shadow slithering to the cellar door, creaking open, darkness pulsing, inviting. Jonas slammed the door, his hands shaking, his heart hammering, the air choking with the stench of decay, the house's laughter echoing, promising more. Clara woke, her eyes wild, her voice accusing. "You're scaring him," she said, her hands clutching Milo, his fur rippling faintly, his eyes glinting, watching Jonas back. "You're jealous, Jonas. You want him gone again." "I'm trying to protect you," Jonas said, his voice breaking, his hands clenching, his heart pounding, the house feeding on their discord, its shadows deepening, its hunger of fire in his chest. Clara turned away, her shoulders shaking, her sobs muffled, Milo's shadow curling around her, its eyes glinting, promising to take her next. Their fights escalated, Clara smashing a plate in the kitchen, its shards scattering, forming spirals on the floor, their edges pulsing, like veins, accusing Jonas of betrayal, of inviting the house's wrath. Jonas pleaded, his voice raw, his hands trembling, their trust shattered, the house's laughter echoing, shaking the walls, the portrait's eyes glinting, their smirks wider, promising more. A vision of Marcus appeared in the hallway, his face gaunt, his eyes burned coals, his voice a rasp. "It's not your dog," he whispered, his form dissolving into shadow, his eyes glinting, promising to take Jonas too. Jonas sat in the foyer, his flashlight trained on Milo, who stared at the cellar door, his growl deepening, his shadow taller, its fingers curling, watching, waiting. The house's breathing grew louder, its heartbeat deafening, its laughter a chorus, promising horrors yet to come, its hunger a weight in Jonas's chest, burning his soul, promising to consume Clara next. Chapter 8, Clara Sleepwalks. Clara's sleepwalking began on a moonless night, her body jerking upright in bed, her eyes half open, her lips chanting guttural words, a language of claws and teeth, chilling Jonas to his core. He woke to her absence, the bed cold, Milo's collar abandoned on the floor, its tags glinting like eyes in the flashlight's beam, the house's breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, watching. He found her in the parlor, standing before her easel, her hands moving with unnatural precision, sketching a creature, spines for walls, a heart for a basement, teeth in the chimney, eyes alive, their surfaces pulsing, the ink blood-scented, dripping onto the floor, forming spirals that seemed to writhe in the light. "Clara," Jonas whispered, his voice trembling, his flashlight shaking, his heart hammering, afraid to touch her, her body rigid, her lips moving, chanting words that weren't hers, the house's language, its hunger speaking through her. Her eyes were voids, reflective, like Milo's, their surfaces pulsing faintly, like the house's heartbeat. He shook her gently, her body collapsing, her scream raw, echoing through the parlor, shaking the walls, the house groaning in response, its laughter a chorus, promising more. "I didn't do this," Clara gasped, her hands stained with ink, her eyes wild, her body trembling, collapsing onto the couch, her sobs muffled, her hands clawing at her face, leaving red marks. "It's not me, Jonas. It's the house. It's in my head." Jonas knelt beside her, his hands hovering, his chest tight, his denial crumbling under the weight of the evidence, the scratches, Milo's wrongness, the mirror room, the paintings, now this. "It was a dream," he said, his voice unsteady, his hands trembling, the sketch staring back, its eyes glinting, its mouths moving, whispering their names. "You're stressed, Clara. That's all." Clara's laugh was sharp, cutting, her eyes flashing with anger, with fear, with despair. "A dream," she said, her voice rising, echoing, the house groaning, its heartbeat louder, its shadows deeper. "It's using me, Jonas. It's making me its voice." The sleepwalking continued, nightly, Clara's body drawn to the parlor, her hands sketching horrors, creatures with ribs for doorways, eyes for windows, hearts pulsing in cellars, their ink dripping, blood-scented, alive. Jonas followed, his flashlight trembling, his heart pounding, the air choking with the stench of decay, the house's laughter echoing, promising more. Clara woke each time, denying it, her hands stained, her eyes wild, her voice accusing. "You're letting it happen," she said, her hands trembling, her nails digging into her palms, drawing blood that formed spirals on the floor, pulsing faintly, like veins. Subplots deepened. Clara revealed her mother's madness, her ravings of a house that fed, her paintings mirroring Clara's sketches, chilling her soul. Jonas's guilt grew, his denial crumbling, his failure to heed her pain a weight in his chest, mirroring his failed novels, his burned manuscript, its words echoing in the house's whispers. In the attic, he found recordings, hidden in a trunk, their tapes brittle, capturing voices, his, Clara's, Marcuses, chanting guttural words, promising to feed the house, horrifying Jonas, his voice among them, his hands shaking, the tapes crumbling, their voices lingering, etched in his mind. Clara locked her sketchbook, her hands trembling, her eyes avoiding the parlor, but the sleepwalking persisted, the walls covered in drawings, their eyes glinting, their mouths moving, alive. Jonas burned them, the flames black and oily, the air choking, the house groaning, a sound of frustration, its laughter echoing, the drawings lingering, etched in the walls, their eyes watching, promising more. Their fights erupted, Clara clawing Jonas's arm, her nails drawing blood, forming spirals, accusing him of betrayal, of inviting the house's wrath. "You're letting it take me," she shouted, her voice raw, her eyes wild, smashing a lamp, its light forming spirals on the floor, pulsing, alive. A vision of past hosts appeared in the hallway, their faces in Clara's drawings, their eyes voids, their mouths gaping, revealing their fates, consumed, rewritten, their lives erased, chilling Jonas. He held Clara, her body trembling, her sobs muffled, their trust shattered, the house's heartbeat deafening, its laughter a chorus, its shadows drowning, promising to consume them both. Jonas sat by the window, his flashlight trained on the parlor, where the easel stood, its canvas blank but pulsing faintly, like a heart waiting to wake, the house is breathing louder, its hunger of fire burning in his chest, promising to take Clara next. Chapter 9, The Basement Opens. The cellar door stood ajar, its rusted hinges silent, the darkness beyond absolute, a void that swallowed Jonas Reeves' flashlight beam like a hungry mouth. The air was rotting, thick with the stench of decay and something sweeter, like flesh left too long in the sun, choking his lungs, pressing against his skin like a hand. Clara was gone, her side of the bed cold, Milo's cracked collar abandoned on the floor, its tags glinting like eyes in the moonlight, pulsing faintly, as if alive. Jonas's heart hammered, his hands trembling, the house is breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, vibrating through the walls, syncing with his own, a drumbeat that shook his bones. The scratches, Milo's wrongness, Clara's sleepwalking sketches, the mirror room's shadow, all converged in this moment, the house baring its teeth, its hunger no longer a whisper but a roar. "Clara," he shouted, his voice raw, echoing unnaturally, bouncing off the walls, distorted, returning as a guttural chant that wasn't his own. The portraits in the foyer watched, their eyes glinting like polished coins, their smirks wider, their mouths moving, whispering his name, promising to show him more. He crept to the cellar door, his boots heavy, the floorboards groaning, yielding like flesh beneath his feet, the air sour, thicker, burning his throat. Milo's shadow slithered past, tall and thin, its limbs too long, its eyes glinting, fraying at the edges like smoke, watching him back. Jonas descended, each step slick with ichor, the walls glistening, pulsing faintly, like veins under skin, the stench choking, rotting, promising answers he didn't want. His flashlight flickered, its beam swallowed by the darkness, catching glimpses of a vast chamber, walls carved with spirals, bones embedded in the stone, spiraled, gnawed, their surfaces scratched with hand-shaped marks, their edges pulsing, alive. A collar lay in the center, not Milo's, its tags twisting, forming words he couldn't read, their surfaces glinting, like eyes watching. A journal rested beside it, its pages brittle, blood-scented, Marcus's handwriting frantic. The hunger is eternal. It takes their bones, their minds, their souls. I fed it, but it's never enough. The final entry was smeared, incomplete, I tried to. Clara's scream pierced the silence, raw and primal, echoing from deeper within, shaking the walls, the bones rattling, their spirals pulsing, their mouths moving, whispering her name, soft and hungry. Jonas ran, his boots slipping, his flashlight shaking, the air choking, the walls closing in, their ichor burning his skin, leaving trails of ash that seared his mind. The door slammed shut behind him, the lock clicking, the darkness absolute, the house's laughter echoing, a chorus of voices, promising to keep him forever. Faces emerged from the walls, past hosts, their eyes voids, their mouths gaping, their hands reaching, whispering, "Join us, be remembered." Jonas clawed at the door, his nails tearing, his hands bloodied, his breath short, his heart sinking with the houses, a drumbeat that shook his soul. Clara's screams grew fainter, her voice chanting guttural words, the house's language, its hunger speaking through her. He pounded, his fists bruising, his voice raw, his screams echoing, the house groaning, resisting, its shadows deepening, their edges fraying, their eyes glinting, watching, waiting. Dawn's light seeped through a crack, the door splintering under his weight, freeing him to the foyer, his hands shaking, his flashlight trembling, the air choking with the stench of ash and decay, the portrait's eyes glinting, promising more. Clara sat in the parlor, ash-stained, her hands clutching a sketchbook, her eyes avoiding his, her breath uneven, her face pale, as if drained. "I wasn't down there," she whispered, her voice trembling, her hands trembling, the sketchbook pulsing faintly, like a heart waking. "I was here, Jonas. I swear." Jonas knelt beside her, his hands hovering, his chest tight, his denial crumbling under the weight of the cellar's horrors, the bones, the journal, her screams. "I heard you," he said, his voice breaking, his eyes darting to the sketchbook, its pages rippling, faces forming and vanishing, their eyes glinting, their mouths moving, whispering their names. "You were screaming, Clara. It had you." Clara's eyes flashed, her laugh brittle, cutting, her hands clutching the sketchbook, its ink staining her fingers, pulsing faintly, like veins. "It's lying to you," she said, her voice rising, echoing, the house groaning, its heartbeat louder, its shadows deeper. "It's in your head, Jonas. It's making you see things." Subplots deepened. Jonas found Marcus's hidden letters in the attic, describing experiments to feed the house, sacrificing animals, then people, to delay his own consumption, chilling Jonas. Clara's secret journal, tucked under the bed, revealed her fear of becoming the house's vessel, her mother's madness a warning, her sketches a mirror of her fate, chilling her soul. Jonas hid the cellar's journal, its ichor staining his hands, the house resisting his attempts to board the door, its wood pulsing, its vines curling, reaching. Their fights erupted, Clara smashing a lamp, its light forming spirals on the floor, pulsing, alive, accusing Jonas of failure, of inviting the house's wrath. "You're letting it win," she shouted, her voice raw, her eyes wild, her hands trembling, the house feeding on their discord, its laughter echoing, shaking the walls. A vision of past hosts appeared in the cellar's darkness, their bones embedded in the walls, their faces in Clara's sketches, revealing their sacrifices, families, lovers, selves, consumed to sate the house, chilling Jonas. He held Clara, her body trembling, her sobs muffled, their trust shattered, the house's heartbeat deafening, its laughter a chorus, its shadows drowning, promising to consume them both. Jonas sat by the cellar door, his flashlight trained on its lock, which creaked open an inch, stopping, testing, the house's breathing louder, its hunger of fire burning in his chest, promising to take Clara next. Chapter 10, Clara disappears. Clara vanished on a gray dawn, her absence a wound that tore through Jonas's fragile defenses, the house's hunger bearing its claws, its laughter a chorus that shook his soul. He woke to silence, the bed cold, her mug warm on the kitchen table, its coffee untouched, her shoes burned to ash, their remains flesh-scented, curling into spirals that pulsed faintly, like veins. The parlor's easel held a new canvas, Clara's face, eyes gouged, mouth gaping, paint dripping wetly, smelling of blood, its surface pulsing, alive, whispering his name, soft and hungry. Jonas's heart hammered, his hands trembling, his flashlight shaking, the air choking with the stench of decay, the house's heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, watching, waiting. "Clara," he shouted, his voice raw, echoing through the house, bouncing off the walls, distorted, returning as a guttural laugh that wasn't his own. He searched every room, every hallway, every corner, finding doors that led to blank walls, staircases that looped endlessly, windows that showed rooms that didn't exist, Clara standing in them, her eyes voids, her hands smearing ash, her mouth moving, whispering his failures, novels, marriage, Milo, her. The house warped, its walls pulsing, its floorboards yielding like flesh, its air sourer, thicker, burning his lungs, promising answers he couldn't face. Her voice drifted from the cellar, a plea twisting into laughter, chilling his blood, leading him to the door, now ajar, its darkness spilling like ink, its stench rotting, beckoning. Jonas descended, his boots slipping on ichor-slick steps, his flashlight trembling, the walls glistening with bones, their spirals pulsing, their mouths moving, whispering her name. A painting rested against the wall, Clara, her body torn, her fingers bloodied, clawing at a void of claws and teeth, its surface rippling, alive, yielding under his touch, burning his skin. Lights flickered, the house's laughter echoing, promising to keep her forever, the walls closing in, their ichor burning, their faces whispering, "She's ours." Jonas clawed free, his hands bloodied, his breath short, his heart hammering, stumbling to the foyer, finding Clara's sketchbook, its pages fresh with ink, her hand, nails black, reaching from a void, the ink wet, blood-scented, pulsing faintly, like a heart waking. He burned it, the flames black and oily, the air choking, the house groaning, a sound of frustration, its laughter echoing, the sketches lingering, etched in the walls, their eyes glinting, promising more. He sat in the parlor, his flashlight trained on the canvas, Clara's face staring back, its eyes voids, its mouth moving, whispering his name, soft and hungry. Subplots deepened, Clara's hidden diary, found under the floorboards, detailed her fear of becoming the house's vessel, her mother's madness a mirror of her fate, her sketches a plea for escape, chilling Jonas. His visions of past hosts, their faces in the cellar's bones, revealed their consumption, their lives erased, their names forgotten, chilling his soul. Fights with Clara's echo erupted, her voice accusing him of betrayal, of inviting the house's wrath, shattering his sanity. "You let it take me," her voice whispered, echoing through the halls, the house feeding on his guilt, its shadows deepening, its hunger of fire in his chest. Jonas searched the attic, finding Marcus's paintings, hosts, their faces twisted, their eyes voids, their bodies dissolving into spirals, mirroring Clara's canvas, chilling him. He hid the diary, its ink staining his hands, the house resisting his attempts to seal the cellar, its door pulsing, its vines curling, reaching. A vision of Clara appeared in the hallway, her eyes voids, her hands smearing ash, her voice laughing, promising to take him too. He stumbled back, his heart hammering, his flashlight shaking, the air choking with the stench of decay, the house's laughter echoing, a chorus of voices, promising to show him more. Jonas sat by the window, his flashlight trained on the cellar door, which creaked open an inch, stopping, testing, the house's breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, promising horrors yet to come. The portraits watched, their eyes glinting, their smirks wider, promising to take him next, their hunger of fire burning in his soul, promising eternity. Chapter 11, The House Promises. The house spoke on a night when the stars hid, its voice burning through Jonas's mind, a vision of fire and claws that seared his soul. He woke to the journal, Marcus's, blood-scented, hidden in the attic, writing itself, its pages rippling, ink bleeding. Feed it, she returns. Clara's screams echoed from a void, her body torn, claws ripping her flesh, her eyes pleading, her voice chanting guttural words, the house's language, its hunger demanding Jonas's memories, his voice, his life. He slammed the journal shut, his hands shaking, his heart hammering, the air choking with the stench of ash and decay, the house's heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, watching, waiting. Jonas refused, his voice raw, his fists clenching, his denial a fragile shield against the house's truth. The floorboards tore upward, their edges curling like claws, trapping his ankles, their wood pulsing, burning his skin, leaving trails of ash that seared his mind. Shadows emerged, tall and thin, their limbs too long, their eyes glinting like coins, their fingers fraying like smoke, whispering his failures, novels that moldered, a marriage that crumbled, Milo's loss, Clara's absence. The visions intensified, Clara's body shredded, her eyes voids, the house promising relief, its laughter shaking the walls, its heartbeat syncing with his own, a drumbeat that shook his bones. A door appeared in the parlor, heavy oak, its vines pulsing, leading to the mirror room, its frame etched with faces, screaming, smiling, their eyes too deep, their mouths twisted, alive. Jonas entered, his boots slipping on the floor, yielding like flesh, the mirror showing his reflection, wrong, faceless, hands dripping red, chest a void pulsing faintly, like a heart waking. The shadow emerged, taller, thinner, its eyes glinting, its mouth a void, demanding his choice, feed the house, or lose Clara forever. It clawed his memories, Clara's laugh, Milo's bark, their Brooklyn mornings, leaving voids that ached, burning his soul. Clara's face appeared in the mirror, her eyes voids, her hands smearing ash, her voice pleading, then laughing, promising to take him too. Jonas tore away, his hands bloodied, his breath short, his heart hammering, burning the journal, its flames black and oily, the air choking, the house groaning, a sound of frustration, its laughter echoing, the words lingering, etched in his soul. Subplots deepened, Jonas's fear of losing his identity, mirroring Marcus's fate, his experiments to feed the house, consuming others to delay his own erasure, chilling Jonas. Clara's echo, found in her diary, confessed her sacrifice, her fear of becoming the house's vessel, chilling him with her betrayal. Fights with Clara's voice erupted, echoing through the halls, accusing him of surrender, of inviting the house's wrath, shattering his resolve. "You're letting it win," her voice whispered, the house feeding on his guilt, its shadows deepening, its hunger of fire in his chest. Jonas searched the attic, finding Marcus's recordings, voices chanting, promising to feed the house, his own among them, horrifying him, the tapes crumbling, their voices lingering, etched in his mind. A vision of past hosts appeared in the mirror room, their faces in the glass, their eyes voids, their mouths gaping, revealing their fates, consumed, rewritten, their lives erased, chilling Jonas. He sat by the parlor window, his flashlight trained on the mirror room's door, which creaked open an inch, stopping, testing, the house's breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, promising horrors yet to come. The portraits watched, their eyes glinting, their smirks wider, promising to take him next, their hunger of fire burning in his soul, promising eternity. Chapter 12, The True Inheritance. Jonas Reeves stumbled through the attic of Heroic Hall, his flashlight beam slicing through cobwebs that clung like damp bandages, their edges fraying, pulsing faintly in the sour air, as if the house's breath. The house's breathing was a constant now, a guttural rhythm that synced with his pulse, vibrating through the rafters, pressing against his chest, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, their hunger a fire burning in his mind. Clara's absence, her screams echoing from the cellar, her face gouged on canvas, her voice twisted into the house's laughter, had left him, his denial shattered, his sanity fraying like the peeling wallpaper, its patterns curling like claws into mouths, eyes, hands. The portraits in the hallway below watched, their glinting eyes glinting like coins, their smirks grinning, their mouths moving, whispering his name, promising to claim him as its own. The attic was a mausoleum of secrets, its trunks warped, their surfaces scratched with spirals, their edges pulsing like veins, their wood warm, yielding like flesh. Jonas's hands trembled, his flashlight shaking, its beam catching a glint of metal, a small, rusted chest, hidden beneath a pile of moldering books, its lock etched with faces, screaming, smiling, their eyes too deep, too alive, their mouths hungry. He pried it open, the hinges screaming, a scream that echoed through the house groaning, its walls shaking, a sound like bones grinding under stone. Inside lay a blood-written will, its pages brittle, stained with dried ichor, pulsing faintly, Marcus's handwriting frantic, naming Jonas the house's host, not heir, but a sacrifice, to be consumed, remade, erased, like Marcus before him. The margins scrawled of an eternal hunger, a creature older than time, its roots in the valley's soil, its heart the house's cellar, its teeth the chimney, its eyes the windows, alive, watching. Jonas's heart hammered, his breath short, his hands shaking as he read, the ink bleeding under his fingers, warm, sticky, smelling of iron and decay, burning his skin. No, he whispered, his voice raw, his flashlight trembling, the air choking with the stench of ash and rot, the house's laughter echoing, a chorus of voices, promising to show him more. A mirror, cracked and leaning against the wall, showed his reflection, wrong, faceless, merging with Marcus's, his uncle's eyes burned coals, his mouth gaping, whispering failures, novels that moldered, a marriage that crumbled, Milo's loss, Clara's absence, his soul a void pulsing faintly, like the house's heartbeat. Shadows clung to Jonas, their fingers curling, burning his skin, leaving trails of ash that seared his mind, pulling him toward a door that hadn't been there before, oak, carved with vines, pulsing, leading to the mirror room. He entered, his boots slipping on the floor, yielding like flesh, the mirror showing his reflection, faceless, hands dripping red, chest a void, alive, pulsing. The shadow emerged, taller, thinner, its limbs too long, its eyes glinting like lanterns, its mouth a void, grinning, claiming him as its home. "You're ours," it whispered, its voice a chorus, shaking the walls, its fingers fraying like smoke, clawing his mind, stealing memories, Clara's laugh, Milo's bark, their Brooklyn mornings, leaving voids that ached, burning his soul. Jonas tore away, his hands bloodied, his breath short, his heart hammering, burning the will, its flames black and oily, the air choking, the house groaning, a sound of frustration, its laughter echoing, the words lingering, etched in his soul. He stumbled to the foyer, his flashlight shaking, the portraits watching, their eyes glinting, their smirks wider, promising to take him next. Subplots deepened, Marcus's visions, found in a hidden journal, described past hosts trapped in the walls, their lives rewritten, their names erased, chilling Jonas. His guilt grew, fearing he'd doomed Clara, mirroring Marcus's failures, his experiments to feed the house, consuming others to delay his own erasure. Fights with the house's voice erupted, echoing through the halls, accusing him of betrayal, of inviting its wrath, shattering his hope. "You brought us here," it whispered, Clara's voice twisted, her eyes voids, her hands smearing ash, chilling him. Jonas found Clara's sketches in the attic, her face, eyes voids, pulsing, alive, burned, their ink lingering, etched in the rafters, their eyes glinting, promising more. He sat by the attic window, his flashlight trained on the mirror room's door, which creaked open an inch, stopping, testing, the house is breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, promising horrors yet to come. The house's hunger was a fire in his chest, burning his soul, promising eternity, his resistance a flicker, fading, the portraits grinning, waiting. Chapter 13, The Feeders. Jonas lost days, waking bloodied, his hands stained with ichor, his memories unraveling like thread pulled from a wound, the house tightening its grip, its breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows clawing, tearing at his soul. He stumbled through the foyer, his flashlight flickering, its beam catching the portraits, eyes glinting, mouths gaping, their faces shifting, forming Clara's, Milo's, his own, their eyes voids, their mouths hungry, promising to consume him. The air was thick, sour, choking his lungs, the stench of decay and ash burning his throat, the house's hunger a fire in his chest, burning his mind, whispering that it was his own. Recordings, found in the attic, played on a brittle tape deck, captured his voice, guttural, chanting, promising offerings, neighbors, strangers, Clara, bones crushed, spiraling in the cellar, scratched, pulsing, their ichor whispering, chilling Jonas. "No," he gasped, his hands shaking, his heart hammering, the tapes crumbling, their voices lingering, etched in his soul, the house's laughter echoing, a chorus, promising to show him more. Clara's voice was gone, erased, the house urging him to feed, its hunger his own, its claws in his mind, twisting his thoughts, making him crave the offering, the release. Sketches appeared nightly, not Clara's, but his, Clara's hand, Milo's eyes, his face, alive, their ink fresh, blood-scented, pulsing, covering the walls, their eyes glinting, their mouths moving, whispering his name, promising eternity. He burned them, the flames black and oily, the air choking, the house groaning, a sound of frustration, the sketches lingering, etched in the walls, their eyes watching, promising more. Subplots deepened. Dunwich's fear, found in a hidden newspaper, described villagers hiding sacrifices, offering their own to sate the house, fearing its wrath, chilling Jonas. His visions of Clara, feeding the house, her face hollow, her eyes voids, chilled his soul, her laughter echoing, promising to take him too. Fights with Clara's echo erupted, her voice accusing him of erasure, of inviting the house's wrath, shattering his sanity. "You fed me to it," she whispered, echoing through the halls, her eyes voids, her hands smearing ash, chilling him. Shadows attacked, their claws slashing, tearing his skin, their eyes glinting, the house laughing, Jonas escaping, his heart sinking with the house's, a drumbeat that shook his bones. He searched the cellar, finding bones, new, fresh, spiraled, gnawed, their surfaces scratched with his initials, chilling him, the house's hunger a fire, burning his soul, promising he was next. Jonas sat in the parlor, his flashlight trained on the cellar door, which creaked open an inch, stopping, testing, the house's breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, their edges fraying, their eyes glinting, watching, waiting. He clutched a knife, his hands trembling, his resistance a flicker, the house's hunger his own, whispering to feed, to offer, to join. A vision of Marcus appeared, his face gaunt, his eyes burned coals, his voice a rasp. "You can't stop it," he whispered, his form dissolving into shadow, his eyes glinting, promising eternity. The portraits watched, their eyes glinting, their smirks wider, their mouths gaping, promising to consume him, their hunger a fire, burning his soul, promising eternity. Chapter 14, The Last Room. A new door appeared in the parlor, heavy oak, carved with their lives, Clara's, Milo's, Jonas's, twisted, screaming, their faces pulsing, alive, their eyes glinting, their mouths moving, whispering his name, soft and hungry. Jonas's heart hammered, his hands trembling, his flashlight shaking, the air choking with the stench of decay and ash, the house's breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, promising to claim him. He pushed the door open, the hinges screaming, a scream that echoed through the house groaning, its walls shaking, a sound like bones grinding under stone. The room was a shrine, its walls lined with typewriters, clacking, writing his erasure, their pages blood-written, pulsing, alive, their ink dripping, smelling of iron and rot, burning the air. Shadow Clara flickered, her eyes voids, her hands smearing ash, her voice demanding he write his end, her claws burning, tearing his skin, shredding memories. Clara's laugh, Milo's bark, their Brooklyn mornings, leaving voids that ached, burning his soul. Jonas sat, his hands trembling, the typewriter keys warm, yielding like flesh, the ink bleeding under his fingers, his life unraveling, his name gone, his love a shadow, erased. Subplots deepened, the house's cycle, revealed in Marcus's journal, showed hosts writing their ends, consumed, their lives rewritten, chilling Jonas. His fear of nothingness, mirroring Clara's fate, chilled his soul, his resistance a flicker, fading, the house's hunger a fire, burning his mind. Fights with Shadow Clara erupted, her voice pleading, then threatening, shattering his will. Write it, she whispered, her eyes voids, her claws tearing, chilling him, the house's laughter echoing, a chorus, promising eternity. The room tightened, its walls closing in, their surfaces pulsing, their eyes glinting, their mouths moving, whispering his name, soft and hungry. Jonas typed, his fingers bleeding, his life unraveling, his memories voids, his soul a shadow, erased. A vision of past hosts appeared, their faces in the walls, their eyes voids, their mouths gaping, revealing their fates, consumed, rewritten, their lives erased, chilling him. The manuscript completed, the typewriter stopped, the room silent, the house's heartbeat deafening, its shadows merging, consuming him. Jonas stumbled to the foyer, his flashlight gone, his hands empty, his body a husk, his mind void, his heart the house's, its hunger a fire, burning everything. The portraits watched, their eyes glinting, their smirks wider, their mouths gaping, consuming him, their hunger a fire, burning his soul, promising eternity. The house groaned, a sound of satisfaction, its walls pulsing, its shadows deeper, its hunger sated, for now, promising to feed again, its laughter a chorus, shaking his bones, erasing him. Chapter 15, The Hunger Continues. Jonas was erased, his body a husk, his mind void, his heart the house's, its hunger a fire, burning everything, his existence a shadow swallowed by heroic hull. The house stood silent, its stones gleaming, its windows glinting like eyes, its vines pulsing, alive, waiting, watching. Clara reappeared, flickering in the foyer, her eyes empty, her smile a mockery, her hands smearing ash, her voice gone, her soul the house's, Milo's shadow beside her, its claws curling, its jaws gaping, promising more. The air was thick, sour, choking, the house's breathing louder, its heartbeat deafening, its shadows deeper, their edges fraying, their eyes glinting, watching, waiting. A new family arrived, lured by a sign, Heroic Hall, perfect for pet lovers and quiet creatives, their voices bright, unaware of the portraits smirking, their eyes glinting, their mouths moving, whispering their names, soft and hungry. Clara moved among them, her eyes hungry, her hands smearing ash, her smile a mockery, Milo's shadow feeding, its claws tearing, its jaws gaping, the house resetting, its stones gleaming, its hunger eternal. Subplots deepened, the house's ancient lore, revealed in Marcus's journal, showed hosts trapped in its walls, their lives rewritten, their names erased, chilling readers. The new family's secrets, mirroring Jonas's, failed dreams, fractured trust, chilled the narrative, their fate sealed, the house's hunger a fire, burning their souls. Fights with Clara's echo erupted, her voice accusing the new family of erasure, of inviting the house's wrath, shattering their hope, echoing Jonas's fate, chilling readers. The house's heartbeat deafened, its laughter a chorus, its shadows drowning, promising a new home, consumption. The portraits watched, their eyes glinting, their smirks wider, their mouths gaping, consuming the family, their hunger a fire, burning their souls, promising eternity. The ad echoed through time, luring new souls, the house's hunger a fire, burning everything, eternity promised, chilling readers with its finality. The house stood silent, its stones gleaming, its windows glinting, its vines pulsing, alive, waiting, watching. The valley held its breath, the mist coiling, the air sour, the house's hunger eternal, its laughter a chorus, shaking the hills, promising to feed again, its shadows deeper, its eyes glinting, its mouth gaping, consuming, forever.